Right, we're now live streaming, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning, everyone. My name's Councillor Amanda Carter, and I'm the Chairman of the Outer West Community Committee. This is a special meeting that we've called to discuss Bowling Greens and Puzzy Visitor Centre. We are live streaming, so could you please ensure that you put your microphones on mute when you're not speaking, and I will take your questions in turn as they come up. I'd like to start the meeting today by confirming that this community committee meets the requirement of the council's constitution, even though members are meeting remotely, and the members of the public are able to view it via the live webcasting. And I understand that last time we had 118 viewers. I hope we get a few more this time. That would be good, wouldn't it? Trying to get through to more people. Can I start the meeting asking attendees to only speak when I ask them to speak? We do already have a vice chairman, which is David Blackburn. So if I go out, if my Wi-Fi goes, David Blackburn will take over. When we're having a vote, I'll assume that your silence is approval. If you have any questions, please raise your hand remotely. Can I now ask people members to introduce themselves, starting with Councillor Peter Carhill.
Hi everyone, Councillor Peter Carhill, Carville Farsley Ward.
Councillor David Blackburn.
I think you're on mute, Councillor Blackburn.
Having a few technical issues today. I'll come back to David. Councillor Anne Blackburn.
I'm back, Councillor David Blackburn, Farnley and Westley Ward.
Councillor Anne Blackburn.
Yes, I just went downstairs to tell David. Councillor Anne Blackburn, Farnley and Westley Ward.
Councillor Mark Harrison.
Councillor Mark Harrison, Puzzy Ward.
Councillor Simon Seary.
Councillor Simon Seary, the Puzzy Ward.
Councillor Trish Smith.
Councillor Trish Smith, Puzzy Ward.
Thank you. And the officers today are, starting with Mike Stevenson.
What about me, Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
about
Councillor
me,
Andrew
Chair?
Carter. I forgot about you as well.
Yes,
Councillor Massey.
Councillor Andrew Carter. You wouldn't think we lived in the same house, would you?
No,
Councillor
you
Andrew Carter, Carville and Farsley Ward.
Councillor Anne Forsyth.
Councillor Anne Forsyth, Farnley and Westley Ward. Thank you.
I apologise. There have been more than technical issues. Sorry, now we'll start with the officers. Mike.
Hi, Mike Stevenson, Localities Officer for the Outer West Community Committee.
Carl Hinchcliffe.
Carl's not attending this meeting, Chair.
Liz Jarman.
Same for Liz also.
Debbie Oldham.
Debbie Oldham, Clerk to the Community Committee.
Fahid Iqbal.
Fahid Iqbal, I'm the Project Support Officer for the Outer West area.
Emma Trickett.
Hi, Project Manager for the Parks and Countryside Service.
Sean Flesher.
You're on mute, Sean.
Sean Flesher, Sean Flesher, Chief Officer, Parks and Countryside.
And Anthony Stringwell.
Good morning, Tony Stringwell, Recreation Development Manager from the Council's Parks Service.
Thank you very much. Moving to the agenda, can I ask the clerk to go through the items 1 to 6, please?
Thank you. So agenda item 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Agenda item 2, there are no exempt items. Agenda item 3, there is a late item and it's a request from Councillor Carter for £1,000 for the Farsley Live at Home scheme. And I believe that is to the members for the Carville Farsley ward.
Thank
Chair,
you.
that would be from our ring-fenced COVID support money. I'm concerned that they're going to start struggling giving the vital support they're giving to elderly people in Farsley, Tyersall, and part of Rodley, and Carvley, of course.
Yeah, they are giving a lot of support at the moment. I mean, it is very difficult for the elderly being stuck at home, many of them having to shield as well. They're having to give extra support to people.
Can I take it that all members are in agreement with that?
Happy to support.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to the minutes.
I'm on agenda item 4, Chair, sorry.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I hadn't finished. Could I ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests? I'll take silence as there's none. And I've received no apologies. Now then we move on to agenda item 6, which is the open forum. On this occasion, we've received a submission from Mr. Keith Worrell, who's the chairman of Leeds Parks Veteran Association. I'll just read it out. So it is our association in total objection to the proposals to close bowling greens in Leeds. For years, the government and authorities have encouraged mature adults in excess of 60 to take more exercise to maintain and prolong life. Bowling is an ideal opportunity providing gentle exercise, open air and companionship with team members and opposition team members. It is also a great benefit to the people playing socially under normal circumstances. It is ideal for a game, a pot of tea and a chat. Many of our elderly community are either widows or widowers, and this sport is their only opportunity to mix leisurely with other people and socialise. And that's the end of it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for that, and thank you to Mr. Worrell for bringing that to our committee. Okay, so now we can move on to item 7. Any matters arising from the minutes?
Yes, Chair.
Are the minutes approved, Chair? Sorry.
Can we approve the minutes as a correct record? I'll take that as a yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Andrew Carter.
Yeah, yes, Chair. You recall that we discussed the summer bans in the parks for next year, and we asked Mike Stevenson to look into the possibility of paying for those bans up front from anything we had left over this year, in case we find ourselves in further financial restrictions next year. I wonder if there's been any progress on that.
Hi, Councillor Carter. Yeah, there's sufficient budget in the Wellbeing Fund to approve that. So I've informed Alison that the committee has approved the bans for next year.
Thank you very much. That's good news.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Chair. We can
Yes,
now.
good. Sorry, went off for a bit. Okay, so the next item is item 8, which is the outdoor bowling Leeds consultation. Can I ask Mr. Flesher to introduce it, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to give some background first in terms of context, and then I will, if it's okay with the Chair, bring Tony Stringwell in just to take you through the consultation proposals. So just for the benefit of the public that are dialing in, just to give some context to the financial position where we are. So the medium-term financial strategy, 21-22 to 25-26, of the council, considered at September's executive board meeting, reported an estimated budget gap of £166.3 million for the period of the strategy. Of that, 118.8 million relates to 2021 and 22. And of this 118.8 million, 59.7 million is due to pressures identified prior to the impact of COVID-19. And the balance of 59.1 million is resulting from the ongoing financial impact of COVID-19. And in response to this financial position, the council's established a financial challenge programme for service reviews. And the Parks, of course, is undertaking one of those service reviews. Executive Board has already approved 3 sets of saving proposals for 21-22, and they were considered through its September, October and November meetings, respectfully. The total savings identified so far are £58.2 million, will reduce the budget gap for next year to 60.6 million. And that anticipates a reduction in the workforce of about 816.5 full-time equivalents. The council's actually bringing a report forward in December, which provides an updated financial position for next year, and that will include the key implications of the comprehensive spending review and any further government announcements. And they'll be reported to Executive Board in December through the provisional budget 21-22. And that report is also expected to include additional saving proposals as well being brought forward to enable a balanced budget in 21-22. So in terms of the saving proposals, the saving proposals that were brought forward as part of those 3 reports are categorised as either business as usual proposals or service reviews. And service reviews require meaningful consultation. And 2 of those service reviews are the proposed closure of the Westley Country Park Visitor Centre and the reduction of the number of bowling greens. So that just provides some context to the situation where we are and why these proposals are being brought forward. So if you don't mind, Chair, I'd like to bring Tony Stringwell in, which will cover the specific item about bowls.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Chair. So building on Sean's introduction then, in terms of crown green bowling, that's one of those areas under service review. And what we have an executive board approval to do is to carry out a stakeholder consultation on a 50% reduction in the number of bowling greens supported by the council, with consideration given to community asset transfer. And there's also a link in the minutes from executive board to staffing reductions. What I'll do now is just take through, therefore, what we set out in terms of in terms of the consultation exercise that we're undertaking, to glean views from those with a vested interest in bowling and those who just wish to comment. What we set out in the consultation document is some of the context that Sean offered, but also just to set the scene for what the current picture is in Leeds. There are presently 62 bowling greens in the city. Those are spread citywide, with 26 out of the 33 wards in the city having a green. And we provide provision for summer bowling and winter bowling. We have reviewed bowls previously. It was formally subject to an executive board report that led to the introduction of a bowling season ticket in the city, which was a positive introduction. But what we have seen and can document, and that is contained in the consultation paper, is a progressive decline in participation since 2014, to the point where in the last full bowl season there's 1,386 bowlers spread across those 62 bowling greens. Within that context, we presently have a situation where the majority of bowling green sites are used by less than 30 members. There is a significant cost linked to delivery of crown green bowling. It's a resource intensive activity for us to maintain greens. So there is a cost linked to it. And whilst we are now receiving a reasonable level of income from bowling provision, it is accurate to say that there is still a significant area of subsidy. In terms of going back to the minute from executive board, what we're asking to consult on is how that number of bowling greens can be reduced from 62 to 31. What we've sought to do then, therefore, within the consultation paper, is to set out some options for how that can be achieved. With the option available to all bowling clubs, should they wish, to pursue perhaps a community asset transfer, should they feel they have the ability to maintain their facility themselves. I think it's fair to say that we recognise fully that bowling greens are a valuable community asset, and would echo the previous statement that you read out, Chair, from the Chair of the Leeds Vets Bowls Association, that the value that bowls clubs have. Some of these options in here, therefore, are built around asset transfer, how we can rationalise the number of greens at each site. There are sites that have winter bowling greens. There are sites that have more than one summer green, and perhaps insufficient members to justify that second green. We also looked at perhaps some options around making some reductions in line with bowling green numbers and participants at each site. And then the idea and concept that perhaps one of the options that under consideration could be the establishment of hubs in certain parts of the city, so that we cluster facilities together. They're how we feel that bowling green numbers could be reduced. And what we've then sought to do is clearly gather as many views as we can. We have now launched an online consultation document. This document that's in front of you and in your papers today has been sent to all bowls clubs secretaries, as well as providing additional copies that they can share amongst their members. And since we launched the consultation exercise, we have had positive number of comments and feedback through that exercise. Plus, myself and other officers have maintained through this period of consultation an active dialogue with the Crown Green Bowling Associations to gain their views and to provide them with a means by which to share perhaps more informal feedback that they've been getting from clubs. So that's the consultation exercise that we've launched. That's a quick update on the progress we've made since its launch. I'll pause at that point, Chair, and invite any questions.
Thank you. So do we have any questions? Councillor Simon Seery.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of questions. So how many sites have winter greens?
9 winter greens in the city, Councillor.
9 winter greens, cool. And then how many sites have 2 greens available to them?
Apologies, just bear with me. Just looking for that piece of information.
No problem.
There are 5 sites that presently have 2 summer greens, Councillor Seery.
Cool, thank you. And then just another question to Sean, probably. Obviously, with the potential of reducing your workload, how many employees from the Parks Department have taken early leavers or have been approved for early leavers? Because we mentioned that there's a reduction of potentially 800 full-time employees leaving the council come December, January, February next year.
So far, 3 early leavers have been approved, and those were directly linked to budget actions that had prior approval. There are budget actions in the papers that went to Executive Board in September and October that do have staffing implications, but until those budget actions are approved, then we won't be letting any further staff go until then.
Right, no worries, thank you.
Councillor David Blackburn, then Councillor Andrew Carter.
Thanks, Chair. I'm referring to para 7 of the report, where it looks at comparators with other local authorities. Well, firstly, Crown Green Bowling is a regional sport. It's like rugby league. It concentrated in the north of England, particularly with Crown Green Bowling, Yorkshire, Lancashire, Staffordshire and Cheshire. And I note from there that it's mentioning comparisons with Birmingham and Cardiff where there is no tradition of crown green bowling. I assume they are flat greens there, which are an entirely different animal to crown green bowling. But my main concern is here is if you look, say, with Sheffield, where there are 42 greens, you're talking about reducing the level of greens in Leeds by half to 31. Now, if you look at the comparator there, it doesn't look bad, does it? But when you take into consideration that Glasgow, Leeds, and Glasgow, Manchester, and Sheffield have knocking on for 250,000 less people than Leeds, then that comparator is not correct. Surely the comparator should be the comparator against the population and not how many particular greens are in a particular area.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. I don't. Your observations in terms of crown green bowling and flats, I think is likely to be accurate. But the information that's shared is obviously the core city participation and core city facilities. So there is an element of large-scale metropolitan authorities that we're looking to compare with. I think I note your observations in terms of per capita use, but would come back to the situation we find ourselves at the minute, which is there are 1,386 bowlers in the city, and it's looking at those 62 greens based on that existing level of usage, and it's within that context that we are looking to reduce the number of greens. But I note your observations in terms of the
Can I come back, Chair? But you are using figures there that are as an example to justify your case that are not relevant to what you are arguing. As I say, 32 greens in Sheffield is equivalent to 48 greens in Leeds. You know, I mean, all right, we're still over the top of that. So it's not entirely arguing my case, but the fact is you're not using correct figures really.
Noted, Councillor. I think one of the things that's been helpful from today is an opportunity to get members' view and the area committee's view, and we'll feed back through the consultation exercise that we should seek to assess supply within the context of total population. I'll feed that back as a consultation outcome.
Okay, thank you. Is that all right, David? I'll take that as a yes. Councillor Andrew Carter, I've got quite a number of people wanting to speak now, and I'll take you all in order. Councillor Andrew Carter.
Thank you, Chair. I just, on the original statement from Mr. Fletcher, I wouldn't like anyone listening to this to think that when Mr. Fletcher quotes the number of full-time equivalent staff that we've lost, that means people have been made redundant. In fact, nobody has been made redundant. All those staff who have gone have volunteered for the early leavers initiative, and that's been why the reduction in staff has taken place. I agree entirely with David. Comparisons are extremely misleading, and that brings me on to the first point I want to make. We shouldn't be using these false comparisons. And when I look at some of the suggestions that have been put in the questionnaire, the question of, for example, only having one bowling green award, well, surely that's completely nonsensical. Let's take the 3 wards in Outer West. Our bowling greens are well spread out. Example, there is 1 in Carveley and 1 in Farsley. There in Puzzy, and my Puzzy colleagues will comment on this, but a similar thing pertains, and in Farnley and Wortley ward. So what you're saying is that individual communities, if the council went for that option, would lose a facility that is not accessible to other people in the ward. That's quite frankly wholly unacceptable. The second point is you go on about the number of bowlers. What you don't say is how many people go to the bowls matches or go to the practice, partners of the people participating, whether they be men or women, and go for the social interaction. And I really do think the council have got this wholly wrong. We should be encouraging and prioritising one, exercise for people of all age groups, and bowling is particularly important. Two, the ability to socialise with one another in an outdoor setting, and that seems to be ignored. And what people are coming back to me and saying is, well, the council seems to have money to spend on anything it wants to spend it on. But then it comes to small things like this, and the council are always consulting, in inverted commas. And how does that fit in with the council's professed wish for an active lifestyle? Or is that only for certain people and excludes middle-aged to elderly people? And then that's an accusation that rings very true. And I understand the difficulty the Parks Department are in. Let me make it quite clear. But I think they should have a much more robust response to the centre, because we've got another issue today and then there'll be more issues to come, I'm sure. And it just seems to me that the people least able to defend the position are the ones being singled out for these sort of proposals. And I think it's badly thought out and it's completely wrong. But I would like an answer on the issue of people actually going and socialising there and the importance of that. Adult social care should be involved, for example, in this consultation to give a view on the value of that social interaction.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. It is accurate to say that some of the consultation document provides scope for anybody responding to just offer their comments, and through that process that marginal social benefit of bowling has been articulated. Furthermore, it's been articulated by the Crown Green Bowling Associations. We'll continue to capture that as being a relevant consideration, as the other observation you made in terms of accessibility being a key consideration in any future level of service provision. And I'll also, furthermore, I'll note your observations in terms of adult and social care's views on the benefit of Crown Green bowling.
Do you need to come back on that, Councillor Carter?
I may come back, let other people come in, but I'm not satisfied with the answers, really.
I just will make one comment to support what you're saying, Councillor Andrew Carter. Many of the people who are playing Crown Green bowling are quite elderly. Some of them are in the 90s, and they're not able really to write letters, never mind being on the internet and do the consultations. And they're finding it very difficult, and they feel as though they're just being singled out of society. You know, people can walk, there's lots of rights of way, there's cycle lanes that millions of pounds have been spent on, which is absolutely great if you can do those things, but these people can't. Okay, now I'm going to ask Councillor Anne Blackburn to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like some details where it states in page 16, which is page 4 of the item 8, the top of the page, it mentions that the savings would, well, it just says it would also enable a reduction of 4.5 full-time equivalent gardeners. Well, I want to know more about that. Are these just gardeners that just attend to the bowling greens, or are we talking about equivalent gardeners that attend everything on the parks? Because obviously we don't want to lose any gardeners. We certainly don't want to lose any bowling greens either. For comments, I would state that certainly I have spoken to the people on the committees of the 3 bowling clubs in my ward. One of them stated to me that he personally is a member of both, of 2 of the 3 of them, not just one. And he said that since his wife had died, really bowling's his life. And we do have one of, in New Westley Rec, there is a winter green, which is well used by the local bowling clubs, but also I think it's Beeston or Holbeck come over because, as has been already stated, there's only a few winter greens in all Leeds. But as far as he was concerned, it was his life. He says it's not just the plain bowling, it's the socialising. He says it's a bowling family. And as for adult social care, well, I think I mentioned this to the director of adult social care, but when you do that, these directors usually bounce it back at you that different directors have looked at the different proposals. In other words, have swapped the paperwork round to check what others are doing, and they seem to think it's okay. Well, I don't know if social services saw this or not, but if they said that was okay, well, I do question where on earth they were coming from to say that, because it isn't. We want people to be healthy. We want them to get out and play bowls, and obviously mix with the family of bowlers. And that will keep them going longer because it will keep them out of the old people's homes, and it should help people as far as certainly keep them fitter with all the bending down for the bowling and obviously getting there and everything, and also mentally fitter as well. So it's totally, to me, it's totally potty. But I just think it's a case of, yes, every department has company cuts. And I think they just think, oh, yes, well, we'll go for bowling again. They did quite a bit in 2014. I was involved then, and I met with Tony Stringwell with some people from my local bowling clubs at the time, and was very involved with it, as I am this time. And yes, Tony will be hearing a lot from me, because, as I think you've said, you can't, just because people are elderly, don't think that they're an easily get at, because there'll be us people that's a bit younger that will be sticking up for them. And also we've got to remember that not all bowlers are elderly. Certainly up in New Farmley, when I was up there last, they had a match on when I was visiting bowlers, and quite a few of the people were younger, probably in the 30s. So yes, there is some younger people coming along. New Westley has invited high schools in the past to come in and have a free game, and that, because you always want younger people to be involved in any sport to keep the sport going. So I don't know what on earth we're playing at here, because it brings in quite a bit of money. They've stated that, and if you do away with half of your greens, then to me, you're going to be putting a lot of your clubs out of business, because they don't just play amongst themselves. The whole thing is it's a competitive sport. And how can you compete if you're going to do away with half your greens? Because a lot of clubs only have one green. So to me, as Councillor Andrew Garter says, it's totally bonkers. But as I said, if you can just explain to me about the gardeners, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Mr. Stringwell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. In terms of the gardeners, what we've sought to do is assign to each bowling green an average number, because not each bowling green is maintained the same. There will be nuances at each site, but an average allocation of person hours to maintain that green. If we were to complete the consultation exercise and then implement the decision based on that average number of allotted hours per green, that would allow for 4.5 members of staff to leave the authority. That wouldn't mean that those other duties don't take place, Councillor. That would be duties solely linked to activities associated with the maintenance of Crown Green bowling. And as touched on by Sean, and also the comments by Councillor Andrew Carter, should this decision be implemented, those staff that would leave the authority would do so under the Council's Early Leavers Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Blackburn, do you want to come back on that? Councillor Blackburn, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, I'd like to thank Tony for that, but nevertheless, yes, we need them. And the other thing, if I can just throw it in, is that when I was talking to one of the bowling association people last night, he was saying it was very difficult to get gardeners that can actually maintain greens very well. And so he says, even if people did decide to run their own bowling greens, that there would be a problem, because it seems as if there's a lack of gardeners with this expertise, because it is something that those greens have got to be perfect for people to play matches on, and there's not many gardening companies, etc., that do it. I mean, we know this from before with Tony's idea then, that maybe the clubs could organise their own cutting of greens, and as I said, we know from then, and certainly it's still the same situation, that there isn't many firms that do it. So I wouldn't want to, if those gardeners have got the expertise, I think we'd be fools to let them go. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Can I just pick up on a point that Councillor Anne Blackburn has made about teams playing each other? If we close all those bowling greens, or if the council close all those bowling greens, it'll destroy the sport altogether, because there'll be no teams to play with. Okay, I'm now going to ask Councillor Peter Carlisle to come in.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for bringing this item, and to our colleagues in Parks for coming to talk about it. I appreciate, and I have complete sympathy with them, because I think I'm well aware of the real difficult position the council is in financially, with a cut this year, I think, of 20% over all of the budget. To be honest, on top of 10 years of reductions that we've seen so far, I have to say it's a credit to the services we've got so far without these kind of cuts coming round again. People often say they don't understand why they're seeing these kind of cuts due to the fact that they're paying the same amount of council tax as they were before. But it's quite clear that obviously the government are not providing anywhere near the amount of funding that they used to provide to the council anymore, and that's why these are coming in. So I do have sympathy, because I'm sure if we were to ask our colleagues in Parks whether they wanted to bring this proposal forward, I'm sure they wouldn't. I think that's important to acknowledge at this point. I had a couple of points. I mean, one of them was a point already made by Councillor Carter and others, that Councillor Andrew Carter, sorry, that really the transport is a huge issue in many of these areas, and obviously in our ward, and I'm sure it applies to the others, but where we're dealing with separate villages that are incredibly difficult to go between, looking at a split between Carverley and Farsley, expecting somebody to find their way across the ring road in order to go to another bowling green and reduce to one per ward, I think would be incredibly difficult to justify. I know that will happen in many areas of the city, but I think those locations do need taken into consideration when we're looking at reduction in numbers. So that's more of a comment from me, really. I wondered whether one question of obviously we've got community asset transfer now. That's the shift of the entire asset essentially to the community to look at. I wonder whether there'd been any thoughts over a kind of mixed transfer where some greens take on some responsibility for the maintenance, but the council still look to provide some of it, because I think that could be a saving. Obviously, we know the costs incurred to the council don't match that funding that comes back, and that might be some way of meeting the gap. Also, just looking at the membership, because Tony, thanks, you provided me the membership numbers that you're working at for the greens that are in. I see, for instance, that Westroyd Park in Farsley is noted down as having 29 members. Obviously, one of the proposals coming forward is to reduce those that have 30 members or fewer. Can you I guess more anecdotally than based on the individual data, but let me know how those fluctuations look in terms of the numbers of members at clubs, because I think it would be a big disappointment if we were to reduce a club that in 2019, for instance, had slightly fewer than 30 members, and now we find we're up to 40, 45 or whatever. I'd be interested in knowing how those fluctuations tend to look over a year.
Sorry for the delay there, Councillor. Doing that COVID thing, I couldn't find the mute button. Yeah, in terms of the fluctuations, they clearly, numbers do vary from club to club in any given year, and it's other than looking at this holistically, where we can see a clear trend. Participation at club by club level will fluctuate. There's an enormous inevitability around that. And I think in terms of feedback and for us to take forward through as part of the consultation exercise, those clubs that would be on the borderline of a threshold is, I think, what you're asking us to give due consideration to, and recognise that there may be scope for that to fluctuate. So we'll recognise that as being a factor that we'll need to consider. In terms of the other questions that you posed around community asset transfer, it is accurate to say that has come out already through consultation to look at how that model could look to develop. I'm anticipating that the bowls associations will possibly look to articulate that further. I think it could be feasible. Some practical challenges around responsibilities for the green would need to be worked through, and I think, or possibly the building also. But I think there are options there as part of the consultation exercise that could be considered. But at this point, what we're looking at is the principle that bowling clubs take responsibility for the green and manage that facility themselves. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Carlisle?
I mean, I think as Tony says there, a lot of it's going to be important what comes back in the consultation, and I think it's really picking out the detail of what clubs have and making sure that if they have put options on the table that may save the council money, yet not require us to go as far as some of the one size fits all policies. I think they're ones I'd really want to look at. So I'd just ask that we can look at that in detail when it comes in.
Thank you. Can I, just before I bring in Councillor Trish Smith, just pick up on a couple of items that Councillor Carlisle raised. One is Westroyd Park with 29 members. I do know that they've got new committee members there who are trying to regenerate it. They're putting up a website and they're trying to get younger members involved, which they are going to be succeeding in. They're quite hopeful about that. And secondly, I do have some sympathy with the council because we've been hit by COVID, which is unprecedented. It's never happened before. And there has to be budget cuts. I understand that. However, this is a question of priorities, and it's hitting the most vulnerable people in our society, the elderly, who have given so much in their lives, and it's now their turn to have something back from us. It staggers me that, you know, that it's a question of priorities. There are other things that could be looked at. Millions of pounds have been spent in other areas, and this is a relatively small amount of money for people who have given so much in their lives now, and it's their turn to receive something. So now can I bring in Councillor Trish Smith, please?
Thank you, Chair. So going back to one of Peter's points, I'm a little bit disappointed when we're supposed to be working cross-party to get a little bit of a dig in. So that's disappointing, especially when the administration, we know, are spending money on other things that aren't necessarily valid. So I go back to best city. We want to be best city. We want to be active Leeds. And yet we're taking away, possibly, or trying to take away, possibly the only form of exercise that a lot of these people can get to. A lot of it is the more elderly, the more retired, the more genteel people. There are also a lot of younger people, a lot of disabled people. My own ex-husband was Leeds Park's champion at Western Flats when he was 22. So, you know, it does go back. There's a great history in Leeds. There's a great pride. You know, to lose these for the sake of £4,000 per green, I think is an absolute shame when we're spending millions on other things, particularly City of Culture, etc. Which, you know, when money's tight, do we really need to be doing that? In terms of the consultation, I think there are more questions aimed at who you are and what you are than there is about what you want, which I think is, that's shameful. If we were talking about cycle lanes and football pitches, would we be in this position? I don't honestly think so. One thing that I think has been overlooked entirely, rather than saying we need to save money, let's reduce the pitches, the number of pitches. Has anybody thought about a membership drive? I know Councillor Amanda Carter has just said about Westroyd are starting that. Why hasn't that been thought of? Why not increase the money coming in rather than automatically just think, let's close it down because they aren't generating enough money? Once again, I think it's a case of needing to think outside the box. You know, let's think what we can do and not what we can't do. And that's really my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Would you like to comment on that, Mr. Stringwell?
No, thank you, Chair. Those comments are noted from Councillor Smith and they're helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I now bring in Councillor Anne Forsyth, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to reiterate so many of the things that have already been said, but I was wanting to concentrate really on finding out the difference between the wintergreen and the summer green provision. And also would like to, well, basically support what Councillor Smith has just said about the idea of actually trying to increase participation, especially for this in older age group, and the importance of that in terms of health and well-being, and some support to be put in for that, and wonder whether there are other provision that could be put in for winter bowling actually inside. My father used to do that many years ago. So I don't really want to spend much more time repeating any of the other things that have been said, but I'd be interested to know what the difference is between winter and summer provision in terms of cost and also participation. Thank you.
Mr. Stringwell?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. The difference between winter and summer provision is that the green is effectively not used through the summer, which means it is in a good state to sustain winter bowling. Anybody who is included within that 1,390 bowlers in Leeds is able to access those winter greens at the various locations at which they're placed. But it is as simple, Councillor, as having green stock that are available to be bowled through the winter. And inevitably, once you then move towards the start of the bowling season in March, that winter green is likely to be in a rundown condition following winter bowling. The authority does still have a indoor bowling facility. It is flat, located at the John Charles Centre for Sport, so there is indoor provision already available through the winter should people choose to use it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've now got Councillor David Blackburn and then Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Just coming back, going back to this idea they have about one per ward. I'll just make a point here. We've got 3 bowling greens in, or three bowling clubs in our ward. New Farnley, Western Flats, and we acquired New Westley in 2005. And I'm just illustrating how silly it is to start thinking about wards. Since local government reorganisation in 1973, New Westley Bowling Club has been in Armley and Castleton ward. It's been in City and Oldbeck ward, and it's since 2005 it's been in Art ward. And quite honestly, we're probably a lot quicker than we have done in the past going to have another boundary change with number of houses that they're due to build, and it may well finish up in another ward. So the fact is, it's the bowling clubs are where the parks are, and the lines and the wards are dependent on where we draw the lines. So saying one per ward is not the way. It should be bowling greens per community and not per ward. Yeah. The other thing as well is, while I'm thinking on, which isn't mentioned here, and I do this from the knowledge of my former chairmanship of Green Leeds. Certain assets in parks, in fact, a lot of capital money for assets comes from other sources than general council money. And a lot over the years has come from landfill tax, which was the Green Leeds Bifford Award, Care Barden, which Councillor Carter used to sit on, and various other things. And as part of that, the council have a duty to maintain that. And if they cease to use it, there are circumstances in which that money may be reclaimable by Entrust, the regulator. Have you looked at the actual costs to the council of actually shutting down greens? And finally, the other thing is you're talking about saving 80,000, is it, a year? Now, does that is there any costs involved taken out of that for the maintenance of the land that you're going to take out of bowling greens?
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. The paper that went to Executive Board did make reference to the point that you raise, which is what should the decision be taken to close a green, what would we do? Some allowance has been made to re-landscape into the parkland that bowling green should the decision be taken to close it. We haven't taken any of those decisions at this point, therefore we haven't costed the any of those sites because we haven't made any determination on what those sites would be. In terms of your observations regarding Entrust and the possibility that certain greens may have received funding, I'm happy to take that away and to do that piece of due diligence should we conclude following the end of consultation that the right course of action is indeed to implement closures. Thank you.
Just another point as well, and I know this relates to New Westley Bowling Club, and I don't know if it relates to anywhere else, but Doug, before he retired, was doing some conservation projects. And one of the conservation projects was in the edges around the bowling greens, between the fence and the path around the bowling. And I know what we were trying to do, and it might have not worked because, as I say, I haven't heard of it since Doug retired. What we're introducing were tansy plants into edges at bowling greens, and reintroducing the tansy beetle, which is a natural beetle from West Riding of Yorkshire. How we made sure that we are not proposing to do anything that would affect any of that conservation work if it's still going on.
I'm not close to the detail on what I assume it's Doug Louis you're referring to, Council Blackburn. I'm not sure of this site that Doug was working on, but I can take that away as an action to see which site in particular Doug had focused on. To just repeat my previous point, at this point, obviously, we've only got a approval from the executive board to consult, so we haven't made any decisions on any green closures. Issues such as that will be taken into consideration should we determine that the right course of action is to pursue closures. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that, David, or is that all right? I'll take that's fine. So now I've got Councillor Harrison, then Councillor Andrew Carter. Councillor Harrison.
My question's to Tony. You seem very good on doing all this consultation. Have you done any consultations on, which has just been brought up, but once you have changed these bowling greens back into whatever you're going to change them into, how much is it going to cost to actually upkeep that land? Because surely that upkeep has to be done by somebody. So why cannot that person upkeep a flat piece of land? Because surely that would be cheaper than upkeeping a piece of land that you're going to have to, one, remodel, which is going to cost money to remodel, to rip the ground up, to put the plants in, to put the walls in. Then you're going to need a gardener to look after that piece of land. So surely the sensible idea would be to leave it as a flat piece of grass, because in my eyes, it's a case of spiking it, feeding it and cutting it, which is sure is a lot easier than cutting trees, cutting bushes, because cutting a bush takes a good 25, 30 minutes, 30 bushes per plot of land. You're looking, it's probably going to cost you more to run the land that's not a bowling green than it is a bowling green. That's point one. And point two, just to reiterate for everybody else that has said that older people do not have the facilities to get around town. Yes, you can say there's a bus, but when you've got somebody that can walk 10, 15 minutes to go to a bowling green to access their exercise, and there's nothing else around for them to do, then what you need to be doing is looking at the cost per head, because I'm pretty sure the cost per head for the cycle lane is a lot bigger than the cost per head for running these bowling greens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Mr. Stringwell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. So I won't repeat the comment I made previously to Councillor Blackburn, because obviously I'd come back to that point that we haven't made decisions on closures. The ideal scenario would be for us to get to a position, should we pursue a closure, Councillor Harrison, where the green is landscaped back into the park and would be cut by a ride-on mower as the rest of the grounds around it are cut. I note your observations in terms of the respective times needed to cut certain assets and certain features, but it is the case for the bowling green that it is very labour intensive. So what we would look to do is to essentially landscape that facility into the broader parkland setting, and ideally it would be a low cost maintenance option versus what is presently a high cost, high activity maintenance function that's required to maintain a bowling green. Your other comments, Councillor, I've noted those. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison, you want to come back on that?
No, thank you.
Councillor Andrew Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's been a very interesting debate. Like Councillor Smith, I'm sorry that Peter Carlisle introduced politics into it. And whilst I accept that there's undoubtedly been significant cuts to local government funding, the impression that somehow Leeds has been unable to support these sort of facilities is completely wrong. I sit on the exec board. I'll give you an example. At the last meeting, we've been being told consistently throughout COVID that Leeds would probably not be able to deliver a balanced budget in this financial year. The last executive board, all of a sudden, as if by magic, £25 million has been identified that had never been brought before the board before as a possible source of revenue, and all of a sudden we have a balanced budget. And the council are getting to the position where they cry wolf once too often. And what undoes the whole argument about cuts is that these proposals are not new. They've been coming backwards and forwards to the council for 20 years. And you reach the conclusion where you think there's a list somewhere in Leeds Civic Hall of the savings officers of the council want to make. And every time they're turned down, they don't tear them up, they just put them in a drawer and wait and bring them back. And these are just a rehash of other attempts. And I'm not blaming the officers in parks for this, by the way. Let me make it quite clear. I'm going, to put it bluntly, above their pay grade. And you get sick of it because you've seen it over and over again. But the point made by Councillor Harrison is very valid. Leeds City Council overspends on capital scheme, multi-million-pound capital schemes, one after another, massive waste of public money. And it is down to priorities, as was said earlier. And they just pick the easy targets all the time. Leeds City Council is still proposing to subsidise the City of Culture project in 2023 by £4 million. Are you telling me that that is more important when it could easily be funded by the private sector and by the arts lobby that has been extremely well funded by the government through this COVID process, without £4 million of council taxpayers' money that would make it completely unnecessary to close these bowling greens, and indeed a whole string of other things as well? It just strikes me there's always money there when certain people want to spend it on grandiose schemes, but when it comes down to maintaining basic services, oh well, it's the government cuts. Rubbish. It's prioritisation, and it's time we all stood up. You look at what's, I'm sorry to go on, but this is really annoying. Look at what's being spent in Temple Newsham in East Leeds. Millions of pounds on new projects that the Parks Department know will not make money and will cost money. And yet, here in the west of Leeds, we're being pillaged. It's not acceptable. And we should be saying so. And I'd like to move, Chair, that we inform the Chief Exec and the Director of Finance and the administration that we find these proposals on bowling greens wholly unacceptable and ask them to rethink them. And I would like to move that.
Hear, hear.
Well, it sounds like we have a proposal, and are you seconding that, Councillor Smith?
I will, Chair, thank you.
Now, I realise that there are other people wanting to speak, but yeah, is everybody happy with that?
Can I just say, Chair, if we've had a proposal and a second, we should take a vote on it, really.
Yes, can we take a vote on it? And it's your silence means that you are voting for the proposal. If you are voting against it or you wish to abstain, you'll have to let us know. So can everybody just put the hands down for now?
Chair, I'll abstain from that. I want to see what comes out in the consultation on this, and I'm sure we'll continue having conversations after.
Thank you, Councillor Carlill, that's noted. And it looks like everybody else is in favour. Okay, can we accept that, please, Clerk?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, moving on to the next item now, which is item 9, which is Puzzy Visitor Centre. Who's introducing this? Is it Mr. Fletcher?
Chair, can I ask Emma to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Emma, would you like to speak, please?
Emma, can you hear us? Is she still on the line?
So in a way, the more we use it, the more it costs as well, doesn't it? So it's like a bit of a wish list, but it's going to cost us more still.
Emma? Sean, I think you might have to take this one. It looks as though Emma's dropped out.
Oh, she's dropped out, but what I can do is she can sit on my computer, actually.
Hiya. Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. Okay,
Hi, sorry about that, everybody. Literally, my screen just froze as you handed over to me. But hopefully you can hear me fine now. So basically, I'm here to talk about the proposal to close the Westley Country Park Visitor Centre. So I'm sure you all know it, but just in case there's anyone listening who doesn't know it, it's a small zoo based in Puzzy Park, and the idea of it is to introduce people to local wildlife and habitats. So it includes lots of information panels about the wildlife of West Leeds and a range of local native wildlife like rabbits, fish and birds. So people can see up close the kind of wildlife that lives in West Leeds. So the proposal is to close the building and the one next to it, which is a greenhouse containing a range of temperate and tropical plants that people can have a look round, with the idea of saving £90,000 a year for the council. So there are two options if the buildings are closed. One is to simply demolish them and return the area back to parkland. So, you know, grass, trees, that kind of thing, integrate them into the park. And in the proposal, there is also a suggestion for people to comment on as to whether we should look at replacing it with a cafe, subject to a business case, because of course we need to make those £90,000 worth of savings. And the cafe would replace the visitor centre, basically, have a terrace overlooking the park. It would contain public toilets that people could use when it was open, and it would be able to retain some of the elements of the West Leeds Country Park Visitor Centre, so those information panels could remain. So basically, we're just here today to seek your comments as part of the consultation on those proposals. So closing the visitor centre, potentially, if there is a business case, replacing it with a cafe, and of course any other comments are welcome. Thank you.
Okay, can I invite comments, please? Councillor Harrison, then Councillor Seary.
Yes, I know I've spoken about this before. However, a thought that has crossed my mind is, why can it not be a visitor centre and a cafe? The fish tanks could be kept. The rabbit area could be turned into a small cafe if you get a business sense, and you could keep both. Because I probably think that the vast majority of the costs are coming from the greenhouse that has to be heated, because it's a vast area that has to be heated. And I think that's where the vastness of the cost is coming from. Could we have a breakdown of how much it costs to run each of the 2 units? Then we know where that money is actually going. Because if it is the greenhouse that's costing more to run, then fair enough, let's shut the greenhouse down. Then we can still keep the visitor centre with a cafe and toilets built into it. Because that front area that is for the rabbits could easily be made into a small cafe, which means the centre will then be making money that should run its costs. Thank you.
Okay, we can take that suggestion as a response to the consultation. Just so you know, the savings that we've put down for the £90,000 are the cost of the animal keepers, the care of the animals, so veterinary fees and stuff like that, and the costs of running the buildings, so electricity and water and stuff like that. So we could definitely look at your suggestion that we combine a cafe and the visitor attraction. Obviously, there'd have to be a business case for that.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, you want to come back on that? Okay, Councillor Seary.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Regarding the consultation, it's not exactly really clear where you're suggesting you're getting this money from for the cafe. It's like basically saying, vote for me and I'll paint the pavements of Puzzy gold. You know, first initial, you've just mentioned that you were going to landscape the area, but actually in the consultation, you're dangling the carrot and saying we're going to build a cafe in that place. So the consultation is, as I've said before, is not true. Again, you're asking more questions about the race, age, demographic than actually questions about the consultation. And I think you're just trying to pull the wool over people's eyes by saying, look, you know, if it goes, we're going to put a cafe in there, but you keep saying that potentially due to budgets, but there's nothing identified for that. So I think the consultation is fake, to tell you the truth.
Thanks for your comments.
Okay, Councillor Anne Blackburn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, can I say that that since Doug Louis left, there's been a problem. This is pre-COVID, actually using the visitor centre at night. The Post Hill group used to meet there, but when Dougie left, they couldn't. They meet at a chapel now. But I find we talk about the tropical plant area, but when my stepdaughter and my son were children, they loved going in there. They was quite intrigued with the banana plants, and it is good for young children to be able to go somewhere that isn't too far away. At that time, my mother and father-in-law actually lived a walk away from Puzzy Park. So when we went to see them, we used to go up there. And we used to look around there, we used to see the birds, etc. It was in our mind I won't say like roundy, but certainly it wasn't just like the local parks. Having this attraction used to get a lot of people going, a lot of people taking the children there. They could get an ice cream. There's an ice cream kiosk there in the summer. And part of the attraction was that, seeing the plants, seeing the birds, and then afterwards the animals that they put inside there. And if you take that away, then I think you're just making the park equivalent to like the parks in my ward are, which are very nice parks, but they are parks with a playground and just no other attractions other than playgrounds, obviously tennis courts and such things, but no visitor centre. And I think we should have somewhere where the local children can go and the schools can take them to learn about various plants and animals and stuff. And that's what it was there for. Take that away, then, as I said, you're just making it into inverted commas, like most of the other parks are. So I think, to me, it would be very sad if we did that. I couldn't vote in favour of that. It's not in my ward, no, but it's there to cover all 3 wards. And it is part, as has been stated, of the Westley Country Park. So yes, it just seems as if it seems easy hits here. That's what it seems to me that parks are going for, or leisure's going for, the people in charge. Easy hits, but at the end of the day, look at what that centre's doing. If it's teaching children about animals, birds, plants, then that can only be a good thing. And it's schools getting the kids out to see these things as well. And it's local. It means they don't have to go trailing to other parks, the other side of the city. We have, yes, we do have another facility where they do have hothouse plants, but it's not in West Leeds, it's miles away. So what on earth, and this idea of putting a cafe there, well, why? Is totally stupid to me, because there's a perfectly 2 or 3 perfectly good cafes more or less next to where the park is. So why would you necessarily go in the park? You might go for an ice cream, but there's an ice cream parlour section there anyway. But I just don't think a cafe would take off there, really. So I think that's a bonkers idea, and there's no money there to do it. And the other thing I wanted to ask is, what is going to happen to these animals? Because you don't say that you're going to move them, because you say you're wanting to save on vets bills. So that says to me that you're going to let them go elsewhere, or put them down or something. As an animal lover, that really does annoy me. Just to use animals like that, it's not on. So I'd like you to tell me what's going to happen with the animals and birds that we seem to want, 1 minute, and now we want to save money by getting rid of them somewhere else. I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. That's a very valid point about the animals. I think that's something that we're all concerned about. Could I ask you to comment on that, please?
Hi. Yes, fair point about the animals. As you're aware, we've got a number of zoos in Leeds. We've got Tropical World and Lotherton Hall as well. And we've also got the farm at Temple Newsham. So we will look to rehouse the animals at those locations, or if we can't house them there, there's a network of zoos across the country that swap animals for breeding, and there's lots of rules and regulations around animals that you keep in zoos, so that you do protect their welfare, so no harm will come to the animals.
I'm sorry, Chair, can I come back in there?
Yes,
Because
do please.
the point was raised about saving vets' bills. So if they are moved to Temple Newsham, you would still have vets' bills. Wherever they are moved to in Leeds would mean that there could be some problems, so you'd have to get a vet out, hence vets' bills. So to me, what you're saying, if you don't have any vets' bills, is that those animals are going to be moved outside of Leeds. Can you comment, please?
There's no detailed plans until the consultation is finished on what we'll do with the animals, but so we'll just have to see about that. But if they are rehoused in Leeds, obviously we're not going to get some more animals when they pass away, so that's where the saving would be.
Can I come in, Chair? Oh, sorry, Chair. I was just going to come in there too. I mean, there are.
Yeah, can I just come back there and say, well, what you said when you opened was that there will be a saving of vets' bills. Now you're saying that the animals will probably get sent to Temple Newsham, which if you did close, I'd be quite happy if they went to Temple Newsham, but really I want to keep them there. But at the end of the day, you're still talking vets' bills. Then when I query it, you say, yes, well, we'll save vets' bills when these animals die. Well, that's totally bonkers, because at the end of the day, you know, how long do the animals normally live that you've got there? You're talking about trying to save money in this budget. Well, if you're talking about waiting till animals die, we could be talking about quite a few years from now. So I think you really want to get your facts right before you start saying things in consultation here, because quite clearly it's jumbled what you're saying.
Chair, it's Sean Fletcher. I've had to swap offices with Tony. Do you mind if I come in and just pick up on some points that Councillor Blackburn's raised?
Please do.
Yeah, so for clarification, Councillor Blackburn, Emma's quite right. We are a member of the Biarza Zoological Society. It allows us to have an exchange between zoos nationally and internationally. But we also have 2 zoos and the facilities at Temple Newsham with Home Farm. The actual cost of running the visitor centre is greater than the £90,000 saving. I think it's something like 93,000 off the top of my head. We haven't got the figures exactly in front of me because I've swapped offices. So we have made provision for some additional costs of moving the animals. Also, by having the animals on sites where we have existing staffing, you will gain efficiencies in terms of their welfare, because their welfare of the collection spread between those other sites is a small proportion of somebody's work, as opposed to having to specifically deploy keepers to the Westley's Country Park Visitor Centre. So it will drive efficiencies from that perspective, and that's where the savings come from. But just for information, the vets bills are only a very small proportion of the total of the £90,000 saving put forward, and not a large proportion of that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I've got quite a few people wanting to speak. So David Blackburn, then Anne Forsyth, then Trish, Mark Harrison, Simon Seary and Andrew Carter.
Thanks, Chair. I'll ask a similar question to the asked before. On this one, I know a substantial amount of money was paid to Westley's Country Park for various projects, and some of them I think connected with the visitor centre. Again, are we checking out with Entrust that there's nothing we have to pay back? Because if there is, then it puts your figures out. And secondly, one of the functions of the visitor centre, which isn't mentioned in the report, was about species diversity locally. The issue to do with the tansy beetles, the tansy beetles were kept in the visitor centre prior to being put out into the wild. The crayfish project on Post Hill on the Beck, that was done from there. Where are you going to deliver that from? And quite honestly, from the last answer, it is quite clear what you are doing is you are closing facilities in our part of the city and moving them Norfolk River and into East. And basically that is not on and it won't do.
Can I have an officer's comment on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just come back on that, Councillor Blackburn. I mean, we undertake quite a large amount of conservation work with partners regarding animal species and habitats, and we will continue to do that moving forward. And we'll take your points that you raised regarding your comments regarding the visitor centre and the grant funding bodies as part of the consultation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Anne Forsyth.
Thank you, Chair. If this year has taught us anything, it's that nothing really stays the same, and we've really got to work within that. Clearly, financially, the council is in the position it is, a lot of it to do with the COVID emergency. But can I just say that we're also in a climate emergency, and perhaps we need to be quite ambitious and really think outside the box here. So the idea and part of conservation is that we would conserve things, and therefore if we're thinking about buildings, perhaps they should be repurposed. So that is a good idea, but I think we also need to spend to save. So Councillor Harrison has already talked about this. We've already got Tropical World and we have got Lotherton Hall. Perhaps we could be very ambitious and think about something further that is actually if you like, thinking around the climate emergency. So my question really is whether there are any ambitious business case plans that would enable us to do this. I'm not thinking about anything as big as the Eden project, of course, but there are examples elsewhere. And as I said, before we even started this meeting, we visited the area yesterday, which is successful financially and in many other ways as well. So I wonder whether Sean would like to, is able to sort of answer that point and discuss about what the potential would be for an ambitious business case.
Yeah, happy to respond. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Forsyth. We'll certainly note your comments as part of the consultation. With regard to specific business cases for looking at centres such as, well, I'll take your example like the Eden project, conservation project. I know you didn't mean it on that scale. We've not actually developed any business cases at this moment on time. We are actually waiting to undertake till the consultation ends before we do the next phase of the evaluation and make recommendations moving forward. So we'll certainly take your points that you've raised. Thank you.
Cabinet that, Councillor Forsyth. Yeah, okay. Can I move on to Councillor Trish Smith, please?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so first off, I agree with Councillor Seary's comments that the consultation is poor and misleading in many ways. I am concerned that the proposal has been put forward in such a manner that, you know, we may have a cafe, we may have this, we may have that, with no real business case or no real understanding of what is actually needed. I'll go back to Councillor David Blackburn's point about two things that we're discussing today, and nobody's thought to look into the situation with regards to prior funding. And what that might mean, if there are any repayments, etc., like that. And I wonder how these things actually come about. It's almost as though it is plucked out of the air as a quick win without any due diligence done at all. I understand from previous conversations that we've had with Sean and Emma that, you know, they are expecting the Puzzy ward members to use their Section 106 money to fund any of these changes, which, quite frankly, you know, if it's not in the best interest of our ward, then why should we use, you know, our public money? You know, we should have been consulted on this before it was ever gone to the public realm, which we weren't, and I'm very disappointed in that. And to be told by one of the officers that it wasn't necessary for us to actually even be consulted was, you know, quite frankly, just wrong. But we are where we are, and we need to try and find a way forward. So, you know, we've lost our petting zoo in recent years. You know, we've got a great history in the West Leeds Visitor Centre. It's our point of difference, as has been pointed out. So let's improve it. Let's do a little bit of spend to save. You know, let's have a small admission charge, perhaps. Let's think of other ways we can generate income from the building. You know, let's not just say that's it, it's costing us money, it's got to go. Let's think about it differently. And I understand that we are in consultation, but equally, the consultation doesn't realistically allow anybody to get any of those points across. And again, the consultations are being done online, which immediately discounts an awful lot of people's voices. So, you know, I do think that we need to stop what we're doing at the moment. I know there's time pressing, it's time sensitive, there's time pressing matters, but I do think that these are two very small amounts of money in the grand scheme of things. I do think they are very, very harmful to the west of the city, especially Puzzy, and I honestly think that we just need to stop these, think about it properly. If it's necessary to keep with the savings, then we stop, we think about it, we do the due diligence, we discuss with ward members, and we realistically and truthfully look at what can be achieved.
Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Fresh to comment on that, please?
No, thank you, Councillor Smith. We will certainly take the points that you've raised as part of feedback for the consultation. Thank you for that.
Can I just say that people are able to respond on paper to the consultation. In the park, we've put up some posters with the phone number on that you can ring. So if you're not online, you can ring that number and we'll post out a paper version of the consultation.
Thank you, Emma. That's noted, but not everybody's out and about at the moment. I myself am barely out and about because I'm CEV. How many other people are? You know, it's winter. People aren't using the park like they would in better weather. I just think it's poor.
Chair, can I come in on that, please?
Yes, please do.
I use the park twice a day and I've not seen one of those signs. And I walk my dog around the park, round the loop and through the middle. So where are these signs? And I'm looking for them. So I think we need more signs up, don't we? Thank you.
We can arrange for more signs to be put up.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things that concerns me there is the comment that Councillor Trish Smith made about the local councillors not being consulted first. It is very concerning because they are there to represent the people of Puzzy and they should have been the first port of call. Okay, so can I take Councillor Seary now, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith, for quite a few of those points. I didn't say them well myself, but you know, we look at the cost saving of potentially £93,000. The breakdown is what, £64,000 out of wages. Realistically, how many people do you actually see in that building in the West Leeds, you know, visitor centre and in the greenhouse? So I query that wage query and the sales savings. But if it's that big, have we not thought about creating a friends group that could help and promote and look after them as well? I appreciate we've still got the vets and the zoo side to manage. Have we not gone out and looked at external funding? You know, there must be things out there, because it must be ticking lots of boxes with green spaces and things like that, and education and children's. You know, and I think it's disappointing that it's come to this consultation without exploring all these options and talking to all the local councillors about what we should be doing. It's like the bowling greens. We should be celebrating what we've got, promoting what we've got. I've never seen a campaign to drive bowling. Yeah. You know, we're not pushing it through doctors. We're not pushing it on social media. Yeah. We're advertising that we're planting trees, but, you know, we're not good at selling what we've got as Leeds. Yeah. We're not very business wise, you know, and we should be. We are a business. We're a massive business, really. And we should be, you know, yes, we've got to protect the bottom line, and we should be looking externally instead of doing these consultations. We should have explored all these options before we've even took it this far. Thank you.
Councillor, do you have a comment on that, Mr. Fletcher?
No, thank you. Other than we'll note Councillor Series' comments as part of the consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Andrew Carter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just seems like same old, as they say. The game was given away, I think, really, I'm sorry to say, when it was suggested that the animals would be transferred to Lotherton or Temple Newsham. Again, East Leeds. Now, Lotherton and Temple Newsham are wonderful assets for the city. But West Leeds, Puzzy Park, has always been, throughout my lifetime and before, the premier park in the west of the city. People who lived, and it's been confirmed by David Blackburn in particular, people in the west of the city of Leeds, even before local government reorganisation, when we had Puzzy Borough, visited Puzzy Park in the olden days as a day out, but now just as a visit. And certainly the last statistics I had indicated that Puzzy Park was still one of the most visited parks outside of Roundhay and Temple Newsham in the city. Now, to me, therefore, I'm drawn to the conclusion that a decision was taken to strangle this project for West Leeds Country Park, and the way to do it is to not promote it, not look at ways in which it could be enhanced and how it could be brought to a position where it was more financially viable, and to completely ignore the environmental benefits of encouraging people to explore West Leeds Country Park, which David Blackburn and I were instrumental in designating. And we are fortunate to have areas of the environment, and and it runs in two directions. It runs from Kirkstall through to Carvely, and it runs from effectively Armley, Farnley and Wortley through Puzzy, and then Puzzy, if you like, is the apex. The environmental benefits are massive, and for the loss of this centre and just to turn it into another cafe is simply not on. And Trish Smith said this should be paused. We should look at it properly and holistically, and how it can be of more benefit to the people of West Leeds in particular, but also the whole of the city. You know, we're just going to finish up with nothing in the west of Leeds at all. And Sean, I have to say, you know, I go back to our exchange on this play barn in Temple Newsham, millions of pounds, and then we say we saved 90,000 here. It just seems to me to be a massive asset transfer in the worst possible way of transferring assets, what's left of them in the west of Leeds and Puzzy, to the far side of East Leeds. And to be frank, this is a most unhealthy perception for people to be being given, but that's what the City Council, the impression the City Council is giving. And as David Blackburn said, this is not acceptable. You need to go away and look at what can be done to promote and enhance this visitor centre and to get more people to explore and walk around the West Leeds Country Park. And it's not on for us to have these persistent reviews of what few assets we have left in the west of the city. It simply isn't on. And this needs rethinking. I want to make another point, and I'm sorry to go on about this, but David Blackburn and I participate in quite a regular meeting where we discuss with the leader of council the issues, COVID-related issues in particular, including the finance. And we've made out the point over and over again that elected members must be consulted at first base when there is any consideration of an asset being changed, closed, or sold. And it simply doesn't happen. And despite the reassurances we've had, it is still going on. And that is the nub of the whole problem. I just think, well, I don't know whether you want a resolution or somebody else wants to move one, but this, my view is this should be taken back, and officers should work with the ward members and indeed with this committee to come forward with proposals which preserve and enhance the visitor centre and not effectively close it.
Is that a proposal, Councillor Carter?
Well, yeah, if that's helpful.
Okay. Councillor Theory?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I'd be happy to move that for Andrew Carter. Yeah, Councillor Carter.
If a second is needed, I'm happy for that as well.
All right, so who's proposing it? Councillor Theory?
Yep, happy. If Councillor Carter's happy for me to take that on.
And
yes,
a second
delighted. Yes, delighted.
Councillor Smith, second it.
Thank you.
Okay, can we move to the vote, please? If you are in favour, please stay silent. Can everybody put their hands down, please? Okay, if you want to abstain or vote against, then please let me know. Otherwise, I'll take it that you're in favour.
Once again, I'll abstain on that, Chair. We've asked the public to come with views on the consultation, and I think now that process has started, I'd rather hear those before I take a view on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Carhill. That's noted. Can we accept that, Clerk, please?
We can, Chair. Yes, that means that 8 people have moved the motion and 1 has abstained. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we'll move on. We've taken quite a good deal of time, but they're 2 very, very important issues here. So now we'll move on to, we've got 1 late item. Councillor Andrew Carter, you wanted to bring that forward, please?
I think we dealt with it, Chair, at the beginning.
Yes, we did, Chair. I think the members from Farsley and Carfley actually approved the £1,000. You're on mute, Councillor Carter.
So date and time of the next meeting, which I understand is 17th of February. Is that correct?
It is, yes, Chair. It would be at
our
usual time.
Sorry, Chair. If it's not till the 17th of February, we need to have one in January to discuss Richmond House. And we need Kath Roth, the Director of Adult Social Care, there to answer questions, because there we have another West Leeds asset, being the only respite care home in the west of the city, with its a consultation taking place on its potential closure, which is causing a lot of concern. And I, for one, want Kath Roth to come and explain.
can I just say, Chair, I can liaise with you and we can arrange another meeting in January if that's what all the members would like.
Everybody happy with that?
Yes, Chair. I was just going to say we need an update on this anyway, please, if it's all possible.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right, can I thank everybody for their attendance, and thank you to the officers. I'm sorry you've had a hard time today, but by and large, I think we're all normally very supportive of parks, and you do a very good job in the parks. And these two issues are very, very concerning to us. So thank you to everybody.